First of all, the involvement of Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda affiliates in the conflict in Libya is proven to be true every day. The news, the media reports, the eyewitness accounts, and the people we capture in the conflict are all indications of a genuine and radical involvement of Islamists, of fundamentalists in the conflict in Libya. We believe it's very dangerous if these people establish themselves in this country, have control of its future, its immense wealth at the footstep of Europe. Today we have news that the famous Abdel Hakim Alhassadi, we talked about him before, we showed you his photographs, and we even listened to one of his phone calls. He's a very famous Al-Qaeda leader who has a history of a jihadist history and fought in many countries, including Afghanistan and Iraq, and was released by Al-Gaddafi Foundation's program a few years ago. He's very well known to intelligence services around the world, and he founded an Islamic Imara, religious state in Darna, and tonight we have news that he prepared 25 highly trained fighters who work as trainers, as experts of weapons and combat, and he used an old Egyptian ship called al-Shahid Abdul Wahab that was not working for months in the seaport of Benghazi. They repaired the ship and they filled it with weapon and communication gadgets, advanced. We have reasons to believe that the weapons and the communication tools were brought in by a Qatari airplane to the Benghazi airport. And then Abdel Hakim Alhassadi, with his 25 highly trained fighters, boarded the ship with the weapons and the communication tools and left to Misrata. They are at this very moment on their way to Misrata. Unfortunately, the coalition know about this as they are observing our waters, and unfortunately they are prepared to allow known Al-Qaeda members to pass from Benghazi to Misrata. This was witnessed by dozens of the inhabitants of Benghazi who were terrified to see the famous Alhassadi coming from Darna to Benghazi and boarding the ship with his fighters. We also have information that Ismael al-sulabi, also a very famous Libyan fighting group member, is training 200 fundamentalists in al-sabi' min April, the 7th of April military camp in Benghazi, and he's been aided by around 20 trainers, experts from Qatar. They are being provided with weapons, with food, with logistics and help of every kind from the Qatari government. One of these fighters was the famous, we did show you before, detailed information about Ismael al-sulabi. He's also a very well-known member of Al-Qaeda, of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, known to all Al-Qaeda experts. One of the people he was training was Abdel Almokhtar Mohammad Almadhouni, who also, of course, like most Al-Qaeda members, has a few names. He's known as Mustafa Azzawi, also known as Arwa, also known as Ibn Alward. And Almadhouni has been Al-Qaeda member since the 80s. He fought in many countries, including Afghanistan, Yemen, Algeria, and Libya. He is wanted by the Interpol, wanted by the American authorities and some other international authorities, and he was killed in action a few days ago in the fighting with the Libyan forces, as he was attacking with a group of fundamentalists the port of Brega. We now believe that Al-Qaeda affiliates, they try to keep out of the media attention. They do not train with the rest of the rebels, as according to their ideology, they refuse, for example, to wear or put on military uniforms, and because of their ideology, they refuse even to share the food and medicine with the other Libyan rebels. Some of them, the extremists, they refuse to pray even with the other rebels. They refuse to talk because they believe that their work or coalition with the rest of the Libyan rebels is just a temporary stage in their jihadist agenda. They, in fact, some of them see the rebels as infidels, as the regime, but they have to fight with them to achieve the ultimate goal of controlling Libya. If any of you would like to follow the stories up, we are able to provide you with copies of the photos and the names and a summary of their activities in Arabic, but we'll be glad to translate that for you. Al-Hassadi is very famous. His name is spelled in many ways, but the easiest one would be maybe A, maybe double S-A-D-I. Almadhouni would be something like A-L, again, you know, it's spelled in many ways, but it's something like A-L-M-A-D-H-O-U-N-I. Almadhouni. As we showed before, some of the rebel leaders themselves admit that Al-Qaeda is fighting with them. We did show you evidence of that, interviews with the leaders of the rebellion. The funeral of Almadhouni itself was attended by members of the so-called Transitional Council in Benghazi. And the members who attended, especially Abdel Hakim Alhassadi, was shown on some Arab satellite television a few days ago. This is Al-Qaeda. On a different subject, the Libyan government again and again proves that it's prepared and willing to help humanitarian aid to the inhabitants of Misrata. And again, we do prove that we are working faster than international organizations. As you all recall by now, hundreds of times we called upon international aid organizations to come through Tripoli, and then we will help them to go to Misrata and provide, humanitarian aid, food, medicine, whatever necessary, and safe passage for the inhabitants of Misrata. Although, of course, the Libyan government is doing its best and it's succeeding in the parts controlled by our armed forces. But in the parts still controlled by the armed rebels, we ask and seek the help of these organizations. So far, we have had the Red Cross, as you know. They are establishing themselves in Tripoli. They have visited Misrata twice, assessment visits, and they are soon going to start their work there. We are fully supporting them.